Welcome to the Sisterhood of Healing podcast, the podcast that wants to help you reach your best and most divine potential. Each week, we dive into topics concerning inner healing, wellness, and spirituality. We discuss strategies and practice from our own personal experiences regarding higher energies, trauma, and connecting to the divine as we take you through our own personal journeys to discover the highest versions of ourselves. In combination with guest speakers, we bring you a comprehensive guide to mental and spiritual wellness and the ability to connect to yourself and the world around you on a deeper level. I'm Nicole, and I'm Christina, and we are two sisters who want to take you along on our spiritual and healing journey. We are each on our own individual healing and spiritual path and bring unique perspectives regarding yoga, chakra healing, meditation, intuition, and trauma healing. Sometimes life is messy, sometimes it's confusing, and sometimes everything falls perfectly into place. Join us as we navigate the path to divine enlightenment together.
Hello, sisters. Oh, I'm going to restart that. Hello, sisters, brothers, and non-binary listeners to the Sisterhood of Healing podcast. We have a very special episode for you all today for International Women's Day, and we have some of our favorite women here to join us. So we have Marlene Cipriani, Alicia Wrights, and Samantha Bendo. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We're so excited to have strong and empowered women to discuss a very special topic that's near and dear to us, especially with us being a sisterhood. Talking about International Women's Day is something that we've been wanting to talk about for a while. So thank you.
I feel like we have an all-star lineup today, so thank you for agreeing to be with us again, and Samantha for the first time, but we'll be seeing you hopefully next season too.
Excited.
All right, so let's get right into it. So we are celebrating International Women's Day today, and I know, like, for me personally, I had never heard of this holiday. The first time I heard of this holiday, this like day to celebrate, was from my friend in university, and she's from Bulgaria, and they celebrated it in Europe, but I had never heard of it here, and this was just 15 years ago, and it was a big deal to her. Like, she wanted to go out and celebrate, wanted to go out to dinner, and so now it is something that we acknowledge as women, and a day that we celebrate and we honor one another and all the women in our lives, and it's just so beautiful. So I guess I'll start off just kind of discussing in general, what does being a woman mean to you? I mean, we're celebrating us today, or people that identify as female. So what does being a woman mean to you? Anyone
Who's going first?
Alicia.
Okay. Honestly, I think that was the hardest question on the list, because it means so many things. It can mean whatever, it can mean something different to everyone. And, you know, I really, that was the one that I looked at, and I'm like, I hope they don't ask me that question, because I don't really even know what that means, because I don't know that that's, it's not an easy one to define. For me, it's just, you know, to be a woman is to step into my power and empower other women and female identifying people, and allow them to be whoever it is they want to be. I think there's been a little bit too much where of women judging other women and telling them what they should be or shouldn't be. And that is something that divides us. And I think that the time for that is over, and the time for us to unite. Also, I just wanted to say, I didn't know that we didn't celebrate this the whole time. It's not often that you hear Eastern Europe is doing stuff like that before we are. Like, that's pretty, that's really like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I would say for me, the first word that comes to mind, like you said, Alicia, it's so many different things. I think independence, because for me, that's probably what I fought for my whole upbringing, coming from traditional backgrounds of like, woman does this, man does this. So for me, when I think of that, definitely taking your power is huge, but independence, just knowing that I can also do what a man does, maybe differently, but that I can have independence. I can work, I can drive, I can pay bills. It's literally like just the basic needs, right? Whether I'm married or I'm single, it doesn't matter. I want to be able to have my independence and know that I can do something, not feel completely lost if I don't have a man in my life. I would say that's being a woman to me.
I think I thought the same thing. I instantly, when I read that question, I thought of just all the different hats that women wear, like the different, like if you decide to be a mother, or you decide to be a business owner, or you decide to be a stay-at-home mom or something like that. That was kind of what came to me, is that there's so many different hats or different roles that we can all play, which is great. But yeah, that's a very hard question.
Totally.
I know. And even like putting that one down, I'm like, how do we even answer this? I'm like, you know what? Let's just like go big or go home. Like, we're going to start with this.
It's great. Great.
I love that you brought that up, Samantha, though, because that's exactly what I was thinking, is wearing like multiple hats, having all these different roles. Like in modern day society, women are no longer just homemakers, right? We're homemakers, we're children, we go to work, like we work for other people, we run our own businesses, we're single mothers, running entire households. I feel like our idea of what a woman is has changed so much drastically over the last 70, 80 years.
We do it all now.
We really do.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. So like we do definitely wear a lot of hats, and it seems like that's just kind of like quote unquote normal, that women are expected to like be the homemakers plus like now pay the bills plus do all this stuff. And I love that we kind of have this sense of, I don't know, when I'm listening to all of you, I just think of like rock stars, like empowerment, like that sense. But so it has become kind of normal, like you said, within the last, I don't know, I would even say within like the last 30 years, 20 years, like hasn't been that long since things have really started to change. But so if we want to say that this is becoming more acceptable, or like our idea of like what a woman is becoming more acceptable, like what would you guys say to people who make the argument that like we don't need to celebrate women? Like, why do we celebrate women? Like, we don't celebrate men. Why do we have to have an International Women's Day?
I would say these are the same people that are like, why don't we have straight pride? Why don't we have like white people day? And I would answer to that, because y'all have never had to fight for shit. That's why. And we need to celebrate International Women's Day because we have had to fight for where we are now. People like the notorious RBG had to fight to get us the right to have our own credit cards, to be able to do all the things that we do today. We weren't just handed that. We had to fight for that in various waves. So that's what I would say, is that we can't get complacent. We can't get, you just go, oh, well, everything's cool now. But, we celebrate International Women's Day because we are celebrating how far we've come and where we've yet to get to.
I agree. I also, whenever I think of International Women's Day, I just think of, we live in a first world, right? We have all these things. There's so much, like so many places and so many people that are still fighting for rights that we have, right? So yeah, I think that that's what International Women's Day is, that we can all be on an equal playing field all over the world and have the same opportunities, because the battle is not done.
Like even women in the States don't have the same rights that we have right now.
Yeah.
They're taking their rights away, actually, which
they're going backwards.
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're going backwards, which is crazy to think about. we've made so much progress, and there's still like the forces that be, the powers that be, who are technically like they have the majority of the power, but are the minorities in society who are making all the decisions and going backwards. And
Well, kind of what Alicia was saying about like how we fought for everything. When I went to a women's networking event late this past year with Melissa Kelly, actually, from Boudoir, it was really interesting on the financial part of the spokesperson there, talking about how a woman was actually only able to get a mortgage on her own. It was in the 1970s. I know there was an actual date. I had noted that somewhere when I came back from that. That was what I took from that entire night, that statement. And I was like, are you kidding me? I had no knowledge of that. So that's when I realized how long women have been fighting, again, for independence, to do it on their own, to be able to have permission. Like, so that really spoke to me. Yeah.
If it's okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Samantha.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I tried to get a mortgage like 2 years ago. I guess it was 5 years now when I was single. And the lady at TD literally told me to come back when I had a husband. So there's still, there's
still some stigma for sure. Yeah.
What?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awful. That's awful.
Yeah.
But that comes from their mindsets. Some of them are still kind of in those mindsets though, right?
Yeah.
And like make more money, get a better job, like do well for yourself. Go find a man so he can help provide for you.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I remember like it was yesterday. I was like, oh, okay. First time like doing those things too, right?
Was she an older woman, like from different generations?
No. I think she was in her 30s, to be honest with you. And it was,
my Lord.
I don't know, I was kind of taken back, right? I was like, I'm trying to do this thing on my own, like maybe get a condo before the market's crazy. And yeah, that was the response I got. So there's still areas where,
Wow. Yeah.
You know, I read something recently, or maybe it was a podcast that I listened to, that even medicine has not focused on women specifically up until very lately. Like it was basically, this is what men are like, and women are like just smaller versions of that. No, nobody autopsied a clitoris until 1999. What? Like insane.
I remember hearing your podcast. I was dying when I was listening to that. You guys were talking about the clitoris. I was like, wow, this is really in depth about women. I love it.
Like, I'm a big fan of clitorises. I
know.
So they come up a lot.
I love it.
They come up a lot.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, totally.
That recent. Like, oh my.
Like I have a child that age.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So clearly we've not, as female presenting people, we've not always been acknowledged for our differences or our strengths or anything in society. So how do we then support one another as women? And like, why does this make it even more important?
Not by telling them to go and get a husband.
Yeah, no kidding.
Definitely.
I think definitely. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
No, I was just going to swear. You go ahead. You're more, I'm sure what you were going to say was way more articulate than what I was going to say. So please, Marlene, go.
I think for as women, especially in today's society, I think it's truly there's supporting women and there's really truly supporting women. And what you are in front of others and what you're saying about it needs to also be authentic in your actual life. Because I've the example of because we're in 2023 and we just finished watching the Super Bowl, all of the stuff that came out from Rihanna's performance and all of the slaying of her after in some ways. And it's like, here's a woman, whether she's pregnant or not, I don't even know the whole story, focusing on how she looks and bringing her down as opposed to saying, look at this woman who's just had a baby, is also maybe pregnant or still who cares? what her belly looks like. A man can be up there, but nobody's focusing on his belly.
Yep.
So just bringing that attention and women actually making comments like that, that is a lack of women supporting women.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about embracing her to say, look at the courage she had to be up there and still taking her power and still doing her thing. And she is amazing. But again, you still are going to get all of these comments coming from a negative place as opposed to a positive one. So being authentic with actually supporting women. You know, and like Samantha said about what, you know, the clerk had said to her about the mortgage is like, yeah, exactly. It's about saying like, well, you can do this. You know what I mean? This is what you would need to attain on your own, and like giving people more independence in what they're trying to gain, right? And giving them more support that way. So yeah, authentic support, like actual real support.
I just wanted to add to what you were saying, because that the negative comments that I mean, this sound horrible, but I expect it from men almost, which is disappointing enough, but to scroll through and read the comments from women about, oh, it was so boring. It was the worst thing ever. Why was she wearing that? Why was she completely covered head to toe? And she didn't dance enough, and she didn't do this. And they're like, she was lip syncing, which she wasn't lip syncing. They had a track, but she was singing. And it's like, and who fucking cares? She's fucking in the air, suspended. But then at the same time, if you go back to the 2020 Super Bowl, everybody talked about Shakira and Jennifer Lopez shaking their asses, and they shouldn't be doing that in their 40s and 50s, and they should cover up, and they should, and it's like, hashtag no winning for women. Like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what we do.
Yeah.
We're going to get criticized for it. So, but I loved that, what you said about authentic support. Like when it comes right down to it, it's the, you know, it's such a great point, because people go, oh yeah, like, you know, I support women. No, you fucking don't, because you say shit like that. So yeah, I hear you on that one. I was so upset. I was so disgusted by people.
I think it was just like a recent example. So for me, it just kind of spoke out about seeing like how someone will say they support women, but meanwhile, what they're actually, you know, actually in action saying and doing behind that isn't really supportive. Meaning if we're not universally really on energetically that same level, we're always still, you know, going on this kind of, you guys give me the word for this. You're seeing my visual.
Like teeter-totter.
Teeter-totter. Like it feels like we're coming up and then someone brings it down, and then like, yeah. And like you guys are like, woo, we're drumming. What are we doing?
Everybody can see us now.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's more like
I feel like as women though, like we're so quick to please. Like Alicia, like you said, I never read any of the comments from the Super Bowl, but like people complaining about Rihanna being like too clothed. Well, what if she was like not clothed enough, and like God forbid a pregnant woman was showing off her belly? Like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like and who are we there to please?
Yep.
And why?
Yep.
I'll tell you right now, Rihanna doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks.
She doesn't.
She does not care.
This podcast. Yeah. She should be here.
Shout out to Rihanna.
Hey.
But that's what makes her taking her power, because she doesn't allow that stuff to affect her. And they said authentically, she's like, great. So just more publicity for me. Thank you. You know, so at the end of the day, good or bad comments is all publicity. So you're still just feeding it. So, you know, go for it.
And why do we think, I mean, I have my own theories, but why do we think that there are still women not supporting women? Like, why do we think that there are women who aren't their authentic selves one moment and who say that they support but then show that they don't? Why does that exist?
They're not happy. I feel like there's a lot of people, that's the only way that people don't support other people, is that they're not in a good place mentally themselves, and they just want to bring other people down, right? Or they don't know how to. They didn't see any good examples in their life. Like, there's no excuses, but I think that if you aren't in a place where you can support someone else, it's probably within that is the problem, right? So
I think that's such a great point, Samantha, that, and it's not an excuse, but it is an explanation. And it is something to keep in mind that there are a lot of people that haven't even stepped a foot onto their healing journey yet. And the reality is there are female misogynists out there, and they have a lot of internalized misogyny, and they are, they're dangerous people. And we need to recognize them for what they are and call them out and try to educate them and try to help them see that, politically, I find it so unbelievable that there are so many women that align themselves and vote against their own interests. It's flabbergasting to see that happen. And you think, what is that about? Some of it's about safety. Some of it's about self-preservation. Some of it's about selfishness. And, just like, not all men are horrible. Not all women are supporting their own interests or their own sisters. Right. So, and I think that's such a good point, that people are just not in a good place. And, yelling at people behind a keyboard is, I have found, completely ineffectual. But you can have in-person conversations with people and start to change their mind about stuff if you can hold steady. And I know I keep invoking Ginsburg, but she never raised her voice ever because she didn't have to. So sometimes you need to just have a conversation with someone and ask the questions. Why do you feel like that? Why do you believe that? Maybe they've never even asked themselves those questions. They've just always been like that,
That's a good point.
This reminds me of, so like I now have a 2-month-old baby, and I can't tell you how many times I've been asked if I'm breastfeeding him, like just from random people. And it's like the quickest question to ask, like, oh, how old's your baby? What's his name? Are you breastfeeding him?
Oh yeah.
As if I'm like any less of a mother if he's like formula fed.
Alicia's
God.
Alicia's
Why-
blowing
why
up
is it
right
wrong?
there.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to hear I'm waiting to hear it. I want to hear it. Do it. Do it.
Crazy. But
You
like
tell them
that's
to go fuck themselves?
I wanted
Sorry,
to.
of course you don't. No.
But like that's like women like pitting themselves against other women, and like why
Yeah.
why are we not asking like how are you doing, what
Oh,
supports do you need?
Absolutely.
Is your baby being fed? Period. There you go. Are you able to feed your baby in
I
any
mean,
way?
of course you're feeding your baby. God.
Yeah. I think
There's so much pressure.
I think
I have a 14-month-old, and I totally agree with you. I have so many friends that are new moms, and like, you literally just give birth to a human, and you're literally learning how to recope and like structure your life. And then there's so much pressure on breastfeeding, and it's hard. Okay. Like, I don't know how many of you guys have kids, but like, it is hard, and like, they don't teach you how to do it. I even had a midwife, and like, she helped a bit, but there are still challenges with it, right? I had a very big baby. I'm trying to carry her, and yeah, there's so much stress, and it brings women to tears that they can't do it, right? So yeah, your baby's fed, you are good. You are good to go, move on. But even in the hospitals, there's pressure to breastfeed right away, right? So it's wild.
Like, I pump my milk instead of breastfeeding because like you said, it's like so incredibly difficult. And like I would never try to explain that to a woman, from an older generation, because it's like there's resentment because like they never had that opportunity to do it, because like God forbid something like that was easier for the younger generation. It's wild.
Or like all the unsolicited advice you've gotten from all of our great aunts and extended family.
Shout out to the aunts.
Yeah, so silly.
They love you.
To put it in.
Yeah.
Well, like you're saying, Nicole, like people just making comments like that. I come from a different place. Like, yes, I'm married. I've been married 10 years. and the difficulties that we've had and the trauma I face with unfortunately not being able to have a child and the loss of it. It's not like I don't want it, but it's the question like, oh, why don't you have kids yet? Or it's just that automatic, thing. And it's like, well, I'm trying to come to a place of peace with my life that I don't need to have kids to feel whole. And that wasn't a choice. And it could still happen. So I say this in the moment now, because I like to be present with my life more so. So when those comments come at you, I'm like, well, how do you know I don't want children? Or how do you know what I've gone through? So yeah, I'm very careful with anyone. I never say, do you have children? I just don't even ask that question, because I know how that feels. And what I've internalized when that's asked of me. I mean, I'm in a different place with this, so it's easy to talk about it now, but not before. But just in saying the assumptions we make, whether it's because you're married, whether it's because you're not married, or whatever it may be, right? You can be single and you just want to have a baby and you don't want to have a man, or you don't know if you're going to meet that someone. And women go out there and they find ways that we know with today's, world, they can make a baby, they can freeze the damn egg and they can have it whenever they want. So it's just a matter how powerful women are. Because to be honest, we were given this power because we have so much strength to be able to produce children and actually have the pain tolerance to do so. So that's, to me, how strong we really are. Because men, right? I love my husband. My husband's very supportive. I don't want to bash any men, but like, of course they come from a different place sometimes, or how they've been brought up. But, he empowers women and thinks it's amazing, what women can, accomplish nowadays. And he's the first one to say, way to go, and I was brought up with the complete opposite of that. But going back to what I was saying is just the fact that, there's just so many assumptions that you're supposed to have this, and that if you're in this situation, doesn't make any sense.
I just think it's so, bringing up that it's 2023. I just think that with everything that we know now, like those are just such inappropriate questions to ask anyone.
Exactly.
Anyone.
We have more knowledge to understand that, you should be more aware of how people might feel, or know that everyone goes through different things in life, that you can't make these assumptions that, well, why don't you? That's the worst way of saying it.
None of your business.
Well, it really is none of your business why I choose or not to have kids, or whether it's a choice or not, right? That doesn't define me as a woman. I think the trauma that I faced from what happened with losing a child, with the guilt that we feel as women automatically, because we're supposed to produce, like in the generations back then, that's what women were about. Like, if you can't produce, then you're no good. It's like, you're just trash. So when you think about it, even as a modern woman, well, at least I feel I am in today's world as an independent woman and a business owner, but I still, love my husband. He's my best friend. But at the same time, I still want to be me. I never want to be lost in a relationship. And so in saying that, like, it's just knowing that it felt like I felt defeated. Like, I felt like I wasn't a good enough woman because I couldn't produce a child. And I mean, some women suffer with a man to say like, well, it might break their relationship because maybe it was more codependent. It was based on them having kids and that's how they're going to stay together. I was lucky enough that I met a partner that was my partner for life, no matter what, kids or no kids. But I realized other people had different circumstances. So, it made me feel at a loss as a woman. Like, I'm like, I can't even, I felt like everything else I do well, I couldn't do the one thing I'm supposed to do. Does that make sense?
Definitely. I don't think people don't talk about that until more recently, the struggles with fertility or choosing not to have kids in general. I have friends that have chosen that route and they always feel guilty when they tell me they don't want to have kids. And I support them. Like, that's great. Like, that makes sense for you. But there's just so many topics I don't think we talk about enough to be able to accept them and not ask those questions that offend people, right? And shouldn't be asked at all, right? So.
And I think a lot of times people just ask them mindlessly. Like, Nicole and I have conversations about like how sick and tired I am of when people ask me stupid questions. Like, oh, you don't have a boyfriend? Why, you can't find one? Like, and then just like, oh.
Right.
It's frustrating. And Nicole has said to me, she's like, you know what? People just don't know what else to say. Like, they don't think before they speak. They don't think to ask you like meaningful questions. Like, there is so much you could ask about me, but you ask if I have a boyfriend, or I used to be in my 20s, like, why are you still traveling? Like, when are you going to settle down? And I'm like, I'm completely settled into my life, which is why I can send myself on trips around the world. Like, this is what I'm doing.
It goes back to what Samantha said, though, about people not being happy with themselves, though.
Yeah.
I think that it comes from them maybe wanting something that you're still doing. So they're like, well, you should slow down because you really should be in this place in your life.
Exactly.
Right.
And then you get that feeling like you have, Marlene, where like you get yourself to this good place. You're like, okay, you know what? I might not have X, Y, and Z that I'm quote unquote supposed to have, but like, look at what I do have, and I'm happy, and I like to celebrate that. And then one little thing just brings you all the way down. And the worst is when it comes from another woman, because you know, like Samantha said, that they're probably facing their own struggles, or like there's a part of them that, you know, maybe misses a part of their life that like you're still living. And again, like, we all are in circumstance. Some of it, like, we've all worked hard to be where we are, but circumstances also put us where we are. And there's things that you can't control.
Absolutely. That's a good
that we celebrate that we can control. So it's just so difficult, and it's so hard, especially when you hear it coming from other women. And it does get disheartening sometimes. It does get, but I think that's what's so important about surrounding yourself by or with like strong women and women that are going to support you, or who can kind of adjust, who can empathize, who have the ability to empathize rather than just question and judge and critique mindlessly, kind of thing.
That's so true. But I also think that we need to make people own their shit sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when they ask a question like that, you say, why would you ask me that question?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you asking? And make them own that, put it right back on them, and have them think for a second, like, oh, it's like, if you want to make small talk, which I absolutely abhor, ask me about the fucking weather. Don't ask me about my uterus, please.
Yes. Yeah.
The activities of my uterus are none of your business.
But we should talk about the clitoris, because that's more exciting.
Yes.
Well, yes, we should. That is always on the table for discussion. If anybody wants to talk about clitorises, I'm there.
All day, every day.
You want to go a little further north and talk about my uterus? You can move on. No, none of your business. It's mind blowing. You know what, obviously this is like a much smaller issue, but I find the same thing with alcohol. I don't drink alcohol anymore. And I find people say, why aren't you drinking?
Always.
And it's like, you don't know anything about me. I could have a very complicated relationship with, you know, family and alcohol, with other substances. You have no idea what you're asking. And I just think that there are a lot of people who are just mindless and clueless about this kind of stuff. And so I think, not all the time, but sometimes it's worth the time to go a level deeper and say, now, why would you ask me that question? Like, why do you need for me to drink to make you comfortable?
Well, I think it's like you said, them owning it. And I think that does need to be like the question back, instead of me even answering that. What is your reasoning for asking me this? Like, like throw it back.
Why do you ask?
Yeah.
I think that's so important. It really does like just turn it on them, and it really does make people stop and think, and then they feel awkward, which I don't feel bad about, because you are grilling me and making me feel awkward and bad about something I shouldn't be. So
and then they'll shift it to the weather, and then they're like, okay, yes,
yeah,
it's supposed to be like, really nice tomorrow. Yeah.
Do you know about the size of the clitoris?
That's gonna be my line now. When someone asks me something stupid, like, are you gonna settle down? I'll be like, do you know about the clitoris?
The clitoris is? Have you heard the good news about the clitoris?
Hand out a pamphlet. Open my purse. Diagram.
That's it. Next year, we're all going to go door to door.
We would be doing society a great justice. We would. Good. I was going to say, as we're talking about like people asking questions and, are you having a kid yet or whatever, I had this conversation with our dad a couple of years ago. And honestly, my parents, God bless them, because they're, what they know might be traditional, but they are so open to having conversations with us and to learning and understanding. And my dad, like he's a dude, he's 67, he's from a different generation. And maybe like 15 years ago now, a friend of mine, her sister had a baby, and it had been a couple months that they'd been married. And my dad's like, no bun in the oven, no bun in the oven. And I was like, Dad, you cannot ask for that when you see her. And he's like, what? It's just a question, I'm just asking. I'm like, Dad, you can't ask that these days because a lot of women can't have babies and it's hard for them or they're struggling or whatever. And he was like, oh, okay. And he doesn't ask it anymore. He does not ask it anymore. And there's been so many other things like that Nicole and I have had conversations with him with. And I don't know if it's because he's a girl dad. I don't know if it's because he's a kind person. I don't know what it is, but I do have to give him a lot of credit because that's not the same for a lot of, especially men in his generation. So it is important to have those conversations.
And what a perfect example of, it doesn't have to explode. It doesn't have to be, it's just, hey, you can't ask those questions because ABC, and they go, oh shit, I never thought of that.
They don't know.
Like you said, educating them about it instead of, and at least, but they have to be open to that shift, right?
Yeah. Your parents sound awesome, by the way.
They're nice people. They're really good people.
Yeah.
They are.
Good genes.
Yeah.
Good genes. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, they're good. They're really good people. So with all these questions, kind of, I don't know. I feel like sometimes as women, when you get asked very monotonous, mindless, inappropriate questions, it kind of, I know me personally, like it sets me back emotionally. Sometimes it sets me back mentally, not as much as it used to, because now I just don't give a shit. I'm like, whatever, like I'm living my life, go be miserable. I don't care. Like get a clue and then figure it out. But like it does jar you. And it's like one of those barriers that we face to like being more empowered and to, I think, like making progress as a whole. Are there other barriers that you can think of that like we face in our everyday life, particularly because we are women? Like, is there anything like that you've come across or something that like you consistently come across? And I know actually you're all business owners, entrepreneurs. So, I mean, that's a whole other discussion too, because business has always been quote unquote a man's world. So what are the barriers?
Oh, sorry. No, when I was in sales, I was in sales, like online marketing sales. I would say about, I guess 6. I've lost track of my life, but I think it was about 6 years. It was definitely a boys' club. Like when they would, I felt very, very out of place. And every other job, I don't think I felt that, but in the sales world where there's sales leads, I felt like I was given smaller leads or just treated differently as a female. And I didn't notice it until I was after I looked back on that job. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of like sexist comments. There's a lot of like, I was probably belittled a little bit more than I even like thought in the moment. I think I honestly did that job when I was 21. So I was very young, but yeah, definitely a boys' club. And I think that I worked harder because of it. Like I would just go out there and try to make the biggest sales that were there. And I actually did this. So, but yeah, it was every day. It was a little bit different. And I always felt like I wasn't given the good leads. I wasn't given as many leads. And I don't know if that was because I was a female or what it was, but definitely in a sales environment, I would say that I felt that way.
I mean, I think Alicia can relate to this because you're in somewhat of the same realm as I am. We just might do it differently. But when I started as a trainer, which was 20 years ago, to be exact, at my age now, it was all male dominant. There was 2 female trainers in our club. It was me and someone else. And I think
I know Mia.
You know, did you say Mia? I said me and someone else.
Oh, you and someone else. I thought it was
me as my dog.
Me and Mia.
Yeah, me and
okay,
Mia.
so,
Yeah.
Okay.
She's my partner. But in saying that, when we were in the club, just in terms of, I would say why I'm in a women's only environment with yoga and fitness now in more of a group orientation is because of that environment. When I was in the gym doing the training, being influenced, I was also a young trainer. So I'm influenced by, these other men. And in terms of how to train my body, yes, men and women, me and Alicia might have differences in this, but this is from my experience, from my physical body, from me personally. The way that I was being trained, the way I was being told how to eat killed my body. So why I say that is because hormonally, as Nicole and Christina might know from our podcast we did, I'd lost my cycle for a year. And I became lactose intolerant as I was overloading myself with protein shakes that just made me extremely distended, and I broke down my body. So my body didn't respond well to the way these men, would tell me how to be. And so this is why I kind of veered off that entire journey. And I wanted to learn more about women's bodies, we're different. Hormonally, we're made up differently. That's going to affect our digestion. It's going to affect how we do train or what exercise are appropriate. We're also all different individuals. So I'm just speaking from my personal experience. So I think that was the barrier that I faced in the fitness industry back then, but it's come such a long way, in terms of, women training men. And I trained some men back then, but that depends on the actual male and how open they are for a female to train them. Right. But I think that's super empowering when a male is being trained by a female, just because they know their expertise and they trust their knowledge. And sometimes some of these men want to be trained by a woman, right? Because, it's just, yeah, it's an interesting facet. Alicia can probably add on to that, or at least give a different perspective. But that was my experience in the industry. And it's not that I don't like training men or having men in my class, by no means. Everyone, everybody. But I choose to focus on the niche because I understand what it's like from that experience.
I think actually, if I'm going to speak about this, Christina and I have a little bit more in common. And Christina, you can correct me if you don't have the same experience. I find as a woman in probably any field, but certainly in our field, you got to do it better, and you got to do it cleaner, and you got to I find that, as a woman, you have a very small margin of error that is allowed. And I find that men in the same position have way more leeway and margin of error and just pure, I'm just going to say it, laziness, and just doing whatever the fuck they want to do. And it's fine. That's been my experience, and I'm not hating on men. I'm not, that's, whatever. That is a leadership issue, and that is an organizational issue in certain places, and that's what I have fought against. That it's like, I don't have a problem doing shit the way it's supposed to be done, but I feel like the rules don't apply equally for men and women. Like I say, the margin of error is much more narrow for us, and it's very easy for us to get knocked down, or people go, oh, see, she can't. Christina, you're nodding your head over there.
Yeah, I actually, no word of a lie, I was actually thinking about this 2 hours ago, because I'm organizing something that involves a lot of people in my care. And I was just thinking, okay, am I on the ball with X, Y, and Z? Do I have everything in order? And I was thinking about a lot of the men who had wanted to help me in this. It's majority females helping me with what I'm organizing, but the majority of men who had asked to help, my first thought was, they're not going to be very helpful. No, they're not going to be, right? Because because like they're not gonna be very helpful because they just want to join to be a part of the experience. And I also thought, I don't know that they would be that responsible, and I don't want to take on that liability. Now, if they were leading this thing that I'm organizing, they could be as irresponsible as they wanted, take on whatever liability, and it would be okay. Like, I feel like they would just brush it off like, oh, it's no big deal, like it's fine, whatever. But I feel like I would be crucified. And I actually had that thought today where, and maybe, I was also kind of getting into the mindset of the podcast, but I had that thought today where I was like, no, I have to make sure that I do it better, because I cannot mess up, and I have to be responsible. It's not like if a guy is responsible for something, he's just like, it's fine. And everyone just accepts it. Like, they just brush it off. And again, not hating men, love men, but like, it is what it is. And I found myself throughout my whole life, like always wanting to compete with the boys. Like I've always been very, very competitive, always wanting to compete with the boys, because the boys are always the best. The boys are always this, the boys are always that. But then it just put me in a place where I'm burnt out, because I was so disconnected from my feminine self, because I was constantly, the majority of my life up until the last couple of years, constantly competing in a man's world. And it is absolutely exhausting. And it's exhausting when you're doing twice as much work just to be maybe on equal footing. And it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
That's my rant. But again, not hating men, love men. just calling out equality. Like, just it is. It is what it is. So amongst all this equality and I feel like I just went off a bit, but that's okay. But among all of this, the difficulties we might face, some of the stereotypes about women, what have you found to be some of the most effective ways to kind of counteract some of the obstacles we're up against, or some of like the negative stereotypes, either in your workplace or day to day?
Okay, I'm gonna jump in on this one, because it goes along the same vein, where I find, so my workspace is male dominated, and there's a lot of the dynamic seems to be, I'm doing stuff, there's a conversation going on behind me, and I'm half listening, and there's certain keywords that pop up, that jump out. And finally it's like, all right. And I'll swing my chair around. All right, time for school. And I think that, and it starts with asking the questions. Well, and this woman was whatever. And I go, and what's the problem with that exactly? And make them explain themselves first. I think, there are a lot of people who think that feminism is a dirty word. And I think it starts with the fact that a lot of people, a good portion of people, don't know what feminism means. They don't understand that feminism means equality. Feminism doesn't mean revenge, although I think a lot of women are feeling like, hey, let's take it there.
Yeah.
But I think that again, it comes down to educating. And it's shocking, the misconceptions that people have about women, about feminism, about all of these ideas, gender politics, all kinds of stuff. And I, for some reason, I feel like it's my responsibility to explain these things to people and say, no. I don't think you have this right. But it's amazing how much stuff comes up in the workplace, or even at my jujitsu gym. Although I find that is probably the most level playing field I found, because it's a rank system. And so, it's like, well, if this chick has this belt, like she's obviously put in the work. She's probably put in double the work. But I am always ready to have that discussion. I'm always ready to give that explanation of, no, I don't think you have the right idea of what this is supposed to be. And, and it's shocking, like when they'll say, well, this woman, she's just too loud. Okay. That's some kind of a character flaw, that you're loud. Or this one has had surgery, and this one's done this, and so fucking what? And who cares? What does that have to do with you? And I think, again, just digging deeper with people, and I'm fascinated by people. I hate them as a rule, but I find them fascinating about why they, what motivates them to have the sorts of views that they have. And maybe, again, like your dad, they just hadn't thought about things a different way. And what I found is that when I swing that chair around, the other men in my workspace will go, oh, here she comes. Like, she's ready. Here's we've provoked her enough now. It's like, yeah, you have. And I find they're really, really good with that. What they don't respond to is people screaming at them. And I don't think anybody responds well to that. And when you can, and it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but when you can argue like a man and debate like a man, because what they're going to say, oh, she's so emotional, she gets so right. But if I step into my masculine energy and I have my bullet points and go boop, 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 then they go, oh, fuck, all right, she's got a point. Right. And play their game. And that seems to, I think I've made some inroads with people that are very, very set in their ways as far as their generation, as far as their culture. And those are the two big ones I think that we're fighting against, is generational ideas of what women are supposed to be, and cultural ideas of what women are supposed to be. And so, yeah, that's what I would say for that question.
I think you answered that fantastically. I think the last thing that you said is that a lot of these issues come from generational values and beliefs, and culturally. I think the one thing we need to wake ourselves up to is a lot of people tend to think that, the gap in the gap between genders is not a North American problem, but it is absolutely a North American problem. Like, the way women are treated, the limits that women have, the safety that women lack in society is all a North American problem. And we tend to peg it on cultures around the world, but it is very much a North American cultural problem too. And I think we need to realize that, because a lot of people don't. We think that we are so advanced, and we're not. We're not.
No, that's a good point.
But that being said, and to go along with what you guys are saying, you told us some really good strategies that we could use to, and it actually sounds kind of ridiculous saying strategies to use to get men to listen, but like coming out of my mouth, that sounds so terrible. But if our goal is equality here, and our goal is to kind of level the playing field as like feminists, and that's not like man hating, that's not revenge seeking, it's just actually sincerely making it equal for all. What can men do to help level the playing field? What can men do to make us feel safe? What can men do to help us achieve equality? Like, what are the things that men can start doing to get in on this discussion too, and get in on this change?
So many things. Let's make a list now. I think at least like household duties, I have a partner that is very open to doing, I guess, like female, things. And I do things that are male things, right? But just being open to getting rid of the roles that are associated with households and different environments that we've kind of associated certain actions with your gender, right? So I know a lot of people that their partners aren't as open, and they really do like the traditional women make dinner, men maybe change the tires or whatever it is, right? But just being open to changing their actions and what they take a part of. But it just depends on how willing people are to make those adjustments and be equal, right? If they gotta want to be equal to bring us forward. If yeah.
And I think, well, going back to what Alicia said, is being challenging them with conversation, though, not with like bickering and like freaking out about how women are treated or were treated, but challenging them in an educated way and in a compassionate way, because we are women. We have a natural makeup. That's legitimate. And male are, it's not even about what they were taught, but how we're made up. Like women are from Mars, men are from Venus. Like we can argue that book if we like, but it's really is true. There are just some things that are just our natural make, right? And I think too, like when you talked about feminism, I think too that term has to be understood better, because some men will take it as, oh, like you're a feminist. And it's like, what does that mean to you though? When you're saying I'm a feminist because I have an opinion, because, you know, I have my own thoughts and I do my own thing, or, you know, what is that to you? And what is so bad about that? Like it's turning it more positive, because I think feminism became this big negative interpretation or not perspective on for men, like, oh, stay away from her, she's a feminist, right? So it's like, okay, but what does that mean? So how do we now kind of change the conversation, change the narrative, I think, about being a feminist or feminism, or you guys know what I mean, but like the title or whatever. I think that needs to change big time. I think that a conversation just about feminism itself will help men maybe understand it better when it's coming from a more, again, we don't want to male bash, because then we're not doing we're not doing a service if we're just going to say what they don't do, right? And there's very many women who are very happy with and content and legitimately content with being that female ideal women stuff. And I think that that needs to be okay too. You know, if you're content with that, that makes you feel whole and that makes you feel good, and you're happy with that, then there's no reason to like shift your mindset unless it's something you want to be challenged by or you're asking for, right? This is where I mean that balance of like independence, and then, you know, because I see that in very many different women, and I'm not going to expect them to be like, well, you should do it on your own. Well, you should be doing, well, that's not really where you want to go with it. It's like, I've really been thinking about doing this, you know, and I'm just not sure if I can do it on my own. And that's where I think supporting women, that's where that conversation comes in, right? So I just think changing the whole umbrella of feminism to men itself will maybe change the idea that it just means a strong, independent woman who has their own ideas, you know, and that we can voice it, you know. I'm not going to say too much about this because I don't know who will listen to this after, but a very, very close person in my life, I still to this day fight to speak my voice, and it'll never change. So for me, I don't want to challenge it anymore because it's exhausting. And it doesn't matter how low I speak. It doesn't matter if I yell. It doesn't ever, it never transports. So for me, I just accept it. And as hard as this is I keep my mouth shut for my own sanity, because at the end of the day, they don't deserve to hear my voice. They don't deserve it anymore. So it's actually, you know, the whole thing, silence speaks louder than words. That's become my mantra around certain people. And when I say that, it could be women too, but men specifically, sometimes just like, it's not worth it. I think me not speaking already has given them, you know, the challenge.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when you were talking about, oh, you know, oh, watch out for her, she's a feminist. And my immediate response is, yeah, maybe you should take a couple steps back, stay out of kicking distance. Like that would, like if you at this point, if that's what, if that makes you feel like, oh, we need to stay away from her, yes, you're probably right about that. And I just wanted to, and thanks for that, Merlin, because, you know, I think that's you need to know when to just not give your energy over to people that aren't going to hear you. So I love that too. And also to address what Samantha was saying about gender roles in relationships, and why it's our responsibility to teach them, well, this isn't a woman thing, this isn't a man thing, this is just a household thing. Like, this is just shit that needs to get done. And Christina, when you were saying like what, like, do we need to, educate men and give them a role in this? And we absolutely do, because if we look back in history, when did civil rights change? When white people started to the non-oppressed group started to stand up and say, hey, this is fucked up. Or when did gay rights and LGBTQ rights come into the forefront? When straight people said, hey, this isn't right, we need to change this. When the group in power stands up and says, no, this isn't right, this needs to change, that is the responsibility of the group that has not been oppressed and assaulted and murdered, and right. And I think that I think it's so interesting how it's like, what a time to be alive, because so much stuff is being questioned now and is changing. It's this, and it scares people, this time that we're living in of rapid social change. People don't know how to deal with it, and they're afraid, and that makes them angry and as well, and just, oh no, I don't want. But it really, it's an interesting time, because it is time for men to understand that they're not helping out at home. They don't babysit their children. That's not how that works. And also, going out and working is a contribution to the household, not to a relationship. And these are all ideas that have been around for so long, and nobody has challenged them. And now we're challenging them. And it's scary. It's scary for the people that have been on top the whole time. It's like, well, what's going to happen to us now? Some of y'all are lucky all we want is equality. Right? So I think that is the role. Thank you. I think that is the role that men have, that, you've enjoyed this, hey man, listen, I wake up every day and I wish for the confidence of a mediocre white man. That's all I want.
I have a friend who says that all the time. She always says, when I come back, I'm coming back as a man.
No,
I want to come back as a dog.
Yeah. I am a rich lady chihuahua.
When I think about my dog, she's got the best life. I'm like, Mia, I'm going to have your life the next time I come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked everything you said, because it goes back to when you said about the roles. It's exactly that. It's like a job description. This is a man. This is a woman. These are your responsibilities.
Yep.
Okay.
It's so bizarre to me. So Samantha, while speed dating, so many people will say like, what are you looking for? And I'm like, oh God, here's like a boring question. And I don't answer.
Don't tell them.
Never tell them, because they always try and be that. And like 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, and here your true colors are showing. But my response is now, I always say, because legitimately, I'm like, I'm looking for a teammate. And so many guys have said to me, what does that mean? And I'm like, a teammate. Do you play sports? You are a teammate. And I've had guys say to me, well, clearly you don't really know what you want if you can't describe it. And I'm like, a teammate, that should be a description in itself that tells you everything you need to know. Like, that's a nice, succinct descriptor. I would like a teammate, everything that comes along with it. You're on the same page, you're working towards the same goal, you've got each other's backs, you're working just as hard. Like, it's all in there. And it's so interesting that
They don't understand.
Like that's beyond, yeah, the like Marlene, what you were saying, the specific roles.
The drumming.
Here we go again with our hands drumming. It goes beyond the standard role. So it's like, well, like, what do you mean? Like, clearly you don't know what you want because you can't define for me what you're supposed to be and what your partner's supposed to be.
No, babe, I'm just not giving you a roadmap.
Exactly. Figure it out. And if you cannot understand what that means, just keep on walking.
It's like they need a Google map for women, right? How to navigate a woman's answer. Yeah.
Probably one to the clitoris as well.
Give them that map.
Exactly. Exactly. If they need a map, you need not apply. Thank you.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. This has been a great discussion. I have two more questions that I wanted to ask. So one is, what is one piece of advice that you would leave our female or female presenting listeners with?
I'll go.
Today.
Don't shrink yourself down for anyone. Don't shrink yourself down for society. Society can choke.
Mic drop.
I agree with that. Be you, honey boo boo. Be you.
Yeah.
Yep, love it.
100%.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that I've learned throughout the last couple of years, I guess. Like there's been situations where I've gone in and I'm like, I know I'm the best at whatever this is. I know I'm better than that guy over there who I'm competing, whatever it is. And I've made myself small. And sure, I regret it, but like, I don't dwell on it. I'm moving on from it, but like, I will never, ever, ever do that again. Ever, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Any other advice?
I think this has been said over and over again, and it could be redundant, but it's that whole thing about stepping into your power and identifying to what that is for you when we say stepping into your own power. And I think with Christina, who knows me well, with being fit within, it's that whole thing, be you, be better, be fit within. That's my motto. And that really just means be you, but know that you can always be better, and that choosing to be better is just going to make you more confident within yourself. And when you're more confident within yourself, everything you do and touch on the outside becomes gold. But you need to really tap into how to build your inner confidence. Mm-hmm. Our lifestyle, our this external factor to make us be confident, whether it's our physical body or our aesthetics or what we wear, whatever, that isn't what's going to build your inner beauty, your confidence, and that's stepping into your actual power, because that's what really lights out into the world. So whatever healing you need, whatever you need to do to create that shift in your life that you're battling with, do it. Step into your power. And I know Christina has said this in many of her Instagram posts and reels and stuff, is healing is a lonely journey. It's a difficult journey, but it is the best journey you will ever go on, because if you can actually confront your own, you are already stronger than you think. So just going on that journey is already setting you on a better path to be or find what you're truly looking for.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Cole, you want to do the last question?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to ask.
That's okay. I know I was going to. I just feel like I'm probably like taking over. I do I want to ask the violence against women one too, but I feel like we're going to get into a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is another.
Just watching
what?
Alicia.
I'll set up a workshop. I'll set up a workshop. That's how we'll address it.
When Alicia does this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's another conversation. This is another conversation.
She's crossing her arms. I'm crossing my arms like
serious business. Serious business.
Yeah. It's my bouncer stance.
Okay, so what is one piece of advice you would leave our male or male identifying listeners with?
Samantha's in speed dating. I'm interested to see what she says.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just think being open to learning different perspectives about what women need and what women are feeling and the different hats that we wear, just being open to listening. And you guys have repeated it, like education, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that maybe they're asking these questions or doing things that are maybe coming off the wrong way just because they don't know, right? So just open your ears a little bit, listen. We won't nag, but just listen.
I think, yeah, just being open. I mean, just being willing to step outside of, what's that saying? Like the most dangerous place to be is or no, the worst phrase in the world is this is how we usually do it.
This is how we've always done it.
Yeah, this is how we've always done it. Thank you. So I think for guys to step outside of that mentality, like this is just how it always is, and to actually listen and to actually be like willing to listen. Because I feel like a lot of, I mean, if things aren't impacting you, why would you bother even thinking that you have to listen or thinking that change needs to be made? So yeah, I think be willing to open your mind, be willing to listen.
And be vulnerable as well. Like I think that
Yes.
a lot of men don't want to be vulnerable, right? Because it goes against maybe what they were taught and how they're to be, right? Men don't cry, right? So that's kind of how a lot of people grew up with, right? So just being open to feeling the feelings, all of them.
Yeah.
I think I would say, and this is kind of oddly specific, but it's something that has sort of reared its ugly head in my life in a couple of different ways. There are a lot of, I like to call them misogynists with microphones in the space right now. And I would just, and I think what makes it so insidious is that it starts out with, here's how to be a better man. Like, you know, go to the gym, read, do this, you know, but then right underneath that is that adversarial, that creation of that adversarial relationship between men and women. And I understand I'm speaking in the binary right now, but, and I think I want men to know that these men in the manosphere, these red pillars, these are men that are setting up MLMs for men. They're selling you a lie to get your money. They're selling you this dichotomy between men and women, this chasm that cannot be closed, that, you know, you have to be an alpha or you're a simp, or you're like, all of this language of the manosphere, of this like manly man, alpha male, as soon as you hear those terms or those words, run. Because there are people, there are men in the space that have good advice, that can help men to understand their relationships and be better partners, be better men in their own right, whether they're partnered or not. I think I need men to understand that some of these people that have extremely large platforms are dangerous, dangerous people, and they don't give a shit about you. They will keep you lonely and angry as long as they can to get as much of your money and your attention as they can. They're not here for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's really important to acknowledge as well. People don't realize, I think people are really attracted to like the charisma or the idea that you could potentially be, I don't know, maybe put on a pedestal like men like that are, but there's nothing admirable, I think, about a lot of what how some people choose to use their platforms.
And it's very attractive. It's very attractive. And it's, it is only setting men up, and men at a critical point in their lives, to be lonely and angry and in some cases violent towards women. And I know you didn't want to address the violence thing, but that is something those people that have those platforms, they are very powerful drivers of violence against women.
Yes.
And they need to be called out, and they need to, they need to be seen for what they are, because a lot of it's like, oh, it's just male improvement. No, that's not what it is. It's disguised as that, but that's not what it is. It's misogyny, and it's violence, and it's adversarial, and it's divisive, and it's not going to do anything good for them or for the society at large. So, yeah.
Great point.
So let's use our platforms to support women.
Yay!
Any final comments before we go from anyone? Anything that was left unsaid that you really, really just want to leave our listeners with?
We're so happy you're here.
Oh, we're happy.
Yes. Yeah, I love the Sisterhood of Healing. I think it's such a great, just a great start to what society truly needs to hear, specifically too, with all the different people you bring on. It's a common, we all have the same common goal, but it's seeing it through so many different people's experiences and expertise, and whatever resonates with those people, you're helping them, one healing step at a time. Because me, for me, I'm all about healing. I think that this world needs a lot of healing, but it also needs to start with you. So, if you expect something to change, you also need to expect that from yourself. You need to actually be the shift. It comes back to being authentic. And authenticity too, I think it is thrown around, but being authentic is like truly living what you want, not just say it, and coming into the conversation, and women that shy away from it being empowered, to know that we live in a different world now, and to not be afraid, and to show up for yourself, because you are the most important person. And women have so much value. And I think without women in this world, I really don't know what this world would look like. We are
Empty.
we are the nurturers, we are the lovers. Even though we have a lot of power, that's still our biggest power. So to me, love is still the best way to heal this world, but we need more of it in order to surpass all of the anger and all of the violence and all of the things that are happening even in this world today. So I just keep saying love rules, but you need to feel that love within yourself first.
Yeah.
Well said.
Definitely. Yes, well said. Well, thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us for this special episode, and happy International Women's Day.
Yay!
Yay! Boop, boop.
Love it.
Happy International Women's Day, everyone.
That's it for our show today. Thanks for joining. Remember, you can always reach out to us on our socials, on Instagram at sisterhood_of_healing, or on TikTok at Sisterhood of Healing. We love to hear from you, so please reach out to us at any time. Thank you for journeying with us today. We'll see you next time.